You're listening to the Business Communicators.
Kind of speaking on the podcasting front, last week there was kind of some news that maybe wasn't too surprising for a lot of folks, but you might recall that over the summer, Spotify paid Joe Rogan $100 million to exclusively license his podcast on Spotify. And I believe at the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, all of the videos that were on YouTube, Joe Rogan's pages, are now going to be hosted on Spotify. $100 million deal, huge deal. Rogan gets, I think the last numbers that came out were 190 million downloads per month. He actually has better ratings than the CBS Evening News. So he's got like a wide and influential audience, but he has been involved with controversy in the past. And this past week, he had a conspiracy theorist, Alex Jones. You might have heard the name from InfoWars. Let's just be very clear on this podcast. Alex Jones is a nutcase. I think we can say that. I think we can all agree. If you disagree, that's fine. You can unsubscribe from this podcast. But he had Alex Jones on for about a 3-hour discussion. It was a really interesting conversation. The reason why I actually listened is because they spoke about energy and climate change, and I was really curious to hear what they said. They actually mentioned my company a few times, so I wanted to make sure that we flagged that through the right channels. But they also spent time talking about, Hunter Biden, the effectiveness of vaccines. Jones is an anti-vaxxer, and then so many different conspiracy theories. Anyways, as you can imagine, blowback ensued, and Spotify temporarily actually removed the episode from their listings. So I want to put this on both of you, and Hattie, I'll start with you. Joe Rogan, I love his show. It's great. I love the long conversation. It's proof that what we talked about last week, that if you have good content, people are going to listen regardless of the length, regardless of how long it is. But Alex Jones was banned from Apple Podcast, from YouTube, from Facebook, from Twitter, from Spotify itself. And he's a guest on Joe Rogan's show. Where do you draw the line on acceptability?
Well, one of the things I just want to say is that Joe Rogan was brave to put him on there, but I think that he also knew what he was doing. When you're looking for ratings, when you're looking for feedback or controversy, why not put someone like that on your show? Now, I don't watch Joe Rogan on a regular basis. I understand he's also a comedian. So you're going to have different interpretations. I personally don't feel that I would have done it because of who Alex Jones is. But I will say that Joe Rogan is not, he is not afraid to take a risk. And he wasn't afraid to put it out there. So given that he did, and sorry, the consequences turned out the way they were, but I'm sure he expected that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to expect that. I mean, he knew what he was doing. He's had Alex Jones on a show before. The feedback was not positive. But if you look at the raw numbers, just on YouTube alone, like not the full episode had it was over 10 million views on YouTube within 48 hours. I mean, those numbers are absurd, regardless of who you are. And to put that in perspective, like the CBS Evening News gets about 7 to 8 million people a night that watch the show. And so he has a lot of influences. And you look at the past guests that he's had on, you've got Elon Musk, you've got Mike Tyson, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Lance Armstrong. I mean, the list goes on. Anyone who is anyone has been on one of his 1,500 shows as some sort of guest. And Thomas, I'm going to go to you now. Rogan moved his headquarters from California to Texas. He's now based in Austin, just off of Lake Travis. I mean, what are your thoughts of this whole situation?
I'm going to agree with Hattie on this one. He knew what he was getting himself into, publicity from this. Joe Rogan is smart. He jumped on the MMA bandwagon, the mixed martial arts thing, as an announcer at its early stages. But I don't know why we're surprised or shocked at this, because this type of, let's bring on a guest that's gonna cause strife and cause controversy isn't new. I come back to the mindset of Howard Stern and the radio broadcast. They're getting paid. Joe Rogan's getting paid no matter what guest it is, whether it's on there or whether it's getting pulled. I think it's more of a Spotify challenge than a Joe Rogan challenge. We live in professional sports where the highest paid defensive end lives in Houston, JJ Watt. But what always goes through my mind is how much of that money is guaranteed. And I'm willing to bet with this Joe Rogan contract, a large percentage of it is guaranteed. So whether Spotify wants to cancel him or not, Joe Rogan's like, yeah, I'm going to laugh all the way to the bank. I think his move from California to Texas is tax-based reasons, because the cost of living in California is so much more expensive and everything else like that. Texas is very friendly to businesses. So I think that's more of a business sense versus a political, here's who my guests are, anything along those lines.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there that, Rogan's going to do what he's going to do and he's still going to get paid. I think what I find interesting is that he doesn't go fully exclusive to Spotify until the end of the year. And if Spotify is going to start censoring and pulling content, they've had a lot of employees that have been very, very frustrated. And of course, you can look online. There's talking points that have been sent through, among the executives and the legal team. But I wonder if he does fully go exclusive, if there's some sort of opt-out clause and he decides to maybe pull back from Spotify. I think that, here's my take. I think that if you're Joe Rogan, one, I wouldn't give a platform to someone like Alex Jones. Alex Jones, denying Sandy Hook, calling it a hoax, being an anti-vaxxer. I think these are really dangerous ideas that I don't think deserve a platform of that many people. 10 million people don't need to hear falsehoods. I think that's just my thought. But from the Joe Rogan take, if you've got that big of a following, 190 million downloads, why not just start your own platform?
Who knows what he was thinking when he decided to take the direction he did. But he also puts me in the mind of, I don't know if you guys remember the Chappelle show.
Oh, yeah.
When Dave Chappelle started out on TV with his show, he was doing a lot of things, and then the network got spooked because he was using words that they felt were insensitive. They felt he was doing things, but they let him go on. And he talks about this in his recent stand-up of how he would go into the office and he would get called into the office, like he was getting called to the principal's office, to be told from the sensitivity person that, you can't say these things. You can't be saying these things. And so that's kind of what, or doing these things, which kind of reminds me of Joe Rogan. He may take it as far as he can take it with Spotify, and then they may yank him, but again, he's still going to get paid. That's what happened to Chappelle. And then Chappelle just decided, okay, I've had enough of you people. I'm gone. And he decided to do what he's doing on his own platform or his own terms, as they say. So that may be what Joe Rogan is setting himself up for. Let's see.
I was going to comment on Dave Chappelle's stand-up comedy point about that when he said it was an interesting week when we weren't called into the office, because it's like something's wrong. Are they not in today? What's going on? Because as a comedian, I think your job is to push the boundaries or to see how close to the line you can get, but not go over it. But I think, Austin, your point of view about starting your own, we've gotten to a point to where it's cheap to advertise, to promote your message, to put out false messages, to any of that stuff. But you still have to have some of those platforms on the backside of it to promote it out there. Back in the day, it was network TV or the mail-in catalogs, and now you have a whole slew of them. And so I think Joe Rogan is probably looking at Spotify as, this is my delivery mechanism. This isn't necessarily going on my own, recording my own everything. This is my delivery mechanism. And the news this morning, the Morning Brew, which is a news aggregator, puts out, had a tender offer that values the company at $75 million. $75 million, last I checked, is less than $100 million. So it kind of makes business sense. Again, going back to that statement, Joe Rogan's a businessman. At the end of the day, he's in it to make money. And those controversial topics are there. I'm 100% torn on the whole how cheap it is to put out your message, and the anti-vaxxers and, the insert conspiracy theorist here. Because we live in America and we have the freedom of speech, people can say whatever they want to a certain extent. You can't yell fire in a movie theater, but you have the ability to do it. And 10, 15, 20 years ago, it was a lot more expensive to do it. And now it's just so cheap. And so many guests or people are able to get their opinion, and they're able to find audiences. Everybody says that the media leans one way or the other. That's because they cater to their audience. People go looking online for the information they want to read about, or the thoughts that they want to hear. And so those people are there. And I just think as a society, we have to be able to say, call time out. This is BS. Move on to the next topic.
Yeah, I agree. I think people want to live in an echo chamber. That's the one thing that really frustrates me about the society that we live in today. And we discussed this a little bit with Sam Chen on season 2 of the podcast. And people are just afraid to have a conversation now with someone that has a different opinion than them. I think open discourse and open dialogue is healthy, and it's something that we need. We can't just be shouting and not expecting change. I mean, if we want to actually create change in this country and this world, we have to listen to diverse thought, diverse opinions. But at the same time, it is frightening that, someone like Alex Jones could have a platform, to spread known falsehoods. That's concerning to me. I get what Joe Rogan's doing. I still love Joe Rogan's show. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he is just such an incredible host. It blows my mind that he came from Fear Factor, back in the 90s to this today. It's just, his growth is amazing. Yeah, I think
Chappelle did a spoof on his Fear Factor, just so you know, full circle again.
Here we go, full circle. That's what we do. We'll change the name from the Business Communicators to the Full Circle. But I think at the end of the day, if you don't like the content, don't listen to it. Joe Rogan's still going to have millions of people that listen. And at the end of the day, maybe it was a good thing he had Alex Jones on the show, and here's why. People are talking about it. And they're talking about how much of a nutcase Alex Jones is, and how tasteless, how dangerous and misleading his thoughts and ideas are. So, Alex Jones still has a platform, unfortunately, with InfoWars. But I think him being on Joe Rogan allowed more people to come out and say, "Hey, no, you can't take this guy seriously." So I don't know. I'm like both of you, I'm kind of torn, but I think maybe it could be a blessing in disguise that the media is actually talking about it and creating discourse, creating dialogue, and putting that message out there to people that this type of content is not okay.
But you also got to remember this too. Alex Jones is not the only person putting negative messages out there. He's
right.
One of many. He just got an opportunity to spew his negativity on Joe Rogan's show, because Joe Rogan has a certain audience. Everybody has a specific audience following whoever. And in the environment that we're in right now, it's an opportunity for people who are considered dangerous, considered spewing all this negativity. They're taking advantage of it. We're in a pandemic. We're in an election year. There is so much information out there. We are overwhelmed, and everybody's looking to get their 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And Alex Jones is just one of those.
On a business sense, I think it makes sense for Joe Rogan. He's getting free publicity out of this whole deal. All the media is grasping hold. He's taken Alex Jones's followers and possibly introducing them into his podcast, so increasing his listeners. The way the media is, I'm going to kind of agree with Austin on this one, is that people are seeing Alex Jones for who he is. And I don't know if negativity is the word I was going to use for some of his stuff. Dangerous is really a word that comes more to mind.
Absolutely.
Because vaccines have been proven year over year over year. While we're in the middle of a pandemic, we've probably kept many pandemics from happening because of vaccines. And saying that, oh, well, I'm not going to vaccine. My kid's not going to get sick. That's because everybody else around you has been vaccinated. And so negativity, I'm going to go with dangerous is the word I'm going to use for some of his stuff. Some of it, yes, definitely negative, but for really what he's standing for, I'm thinking dangerous.
Yeah, I think you definitely hit the head of the nail there. Dangerous is the the correct term, the right term. But yeah, I think that's it's really a tumultuous year when you look at it overall. I mean, for those that are listening to this podcast, we're releasing this on Monday, November 2nd, Tuesday, November 3rd, tomorrow. It's election day, and there's going to be a lot of news out. Half the country's not going to be happy one way or the other. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. So my lasting message to you is this: consume as much information as you can. Read from both sides, politically. Hear people, listen to people to help inform your decision. I'm not saying buy into the BS conspiracy theories. You should not do that. We don't want that. But I think if people have a different opinion than you, listen to them. Don't shout and try to prove, your facts, your talking points. Have a conversation, because at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. When we wake up on Wednesday, November 4th, we're still living in the same country. We still have to work together. So think about that throughout the rest of the week.
And as this drops right before the election, it kind of makes me think that the old adage, the pen is mightier than the sword. Those who control the information out, and going back, that's now it's so easy to have a voice. But yeah, do your research, come to your own conclusions. Don't just repeat what anybody says for the sake of repeating what anyone says. If not, then, we're going to be teaching the sky is purple because somebody thinks the sky is purple. So yes, speak up, do your research, and enjoy yourself. It's a ride. This thing called life is a ride. Let's have some fun with it. But as communicators, my takeaway is, let's remember that the pen is mightier than the sword. And while we're here with the spoken word, it's still communications.
You've been listening to the Business Communicators.